On our newscast tonight, an inter-Korean military hotline disconnected 5 months ago near the West Sea is open again. Another significant step forward in efforts to reopen the shuttered Gaeseong Industrial Complex. North Korea has not yet delivered on its promise to return to the negotiating table over its nuclear program. South Korea, the U.S. and China make a fresh push to reopen the six-party talks. Russia, one of the nations that is firmly against the U.S. drive for military strikes on Syria, is under fire. First, for allegedly supplying chemical weapons to Syria, and for also blocking all UN Security Council efforts to punish the Assad regime. Stay with us for these stories and more. It is 11 a.m. in Berlin, 1 p.m. in St. Petersburg, and 6 on a Friday evening here in Seoul. You're watching Early Edition at 6. I'm Kim Hyun-ji.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us. The inter-Korean military hotline near the West Sea has now been reconnected.
Right. The move comes 5 months after Pyongyang unilaterally severed the line, and this is expected to speed up the reopening of the two Korea's Gaeseong Industrial Complex. Our Han Da-eun reports.
The two Koreas have revived a military hotline near the West Sea on this Friday, taking a step closer to reopening the shuttered inter-Korean Gaeseong Industrial Complex. The revival comes a day after the South and North Korean sides of the Inter-Korean Joint Committee on the Gaeseong Complex met to resolve communication issues surrounding the joint business zone. South Korea had strongly demanded the hotline be reconnected as one of the preconditions for resuming operations at Gaeseong, as it was the only 24-hour communication channel between the two Koreas that could guarantee the safety of the South Koreans working at Gaeseong.
The West Sea military hotline is necessary for entrance control at Gaeseong. It is also critical when dealing with unexpected emergency situations there.
The line was cut unilaterally by North Korea back in March in protest against the annual South Korea-U.S. joint military drill called Key Resolve. With the reconnection of the hotline, facility checks and other final preparations needed to reopen the complex are also expected to pick up pace. Officials say the complex will likely be up and running again soon, possibly before Korea's fall harvest holiday, Chuseok, later this month. The two Koreas will meet again next Tuesday for the second Inter-Korean Committee meeting, where they will discuss the additional steps they'll have to take before reopening the shuttered complex. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
There is a flurry of diplomacy to bring North Korea back to the six-party denuclearization talks that have been stalled for almost 5 years now. A senior U.S. official is in Seoul for talks on the North's nuclear programs after the recent visit to Pyongyang by China's top nuclear envoy. Our Kim Hyun-bin has the latest.
U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs Daniel Russell sat down with senior South Korean government officials on Friday to discuss North Korean issues, including Pyongyang's nuclear weapons program and ways to get the North back to the denuclearization talks.
And that only by full compliance with its international obligations, with the UN Security Council resolutions, and only by adhering to its own commitments under the six-party process can North Korea achieve the security, let alone the respect, let alone the prosperity and economic growth that it says that it wants.
Russell is in Seoul ahead of a visit by Washington's chief delegate for the six-party talks, Glenn Davies. Davies is scheduled to visit South Korea, China, and Japan next week. Meanwhile, China's special representative for Korean Peninsula's affairs, Woo Da-wei, recently visited Pyongyang, raising hopes he convinced the North Korean leadership to make some concessions to get the six-party talks going again. The Chinese government recently called on all members of the six-party talks to attend a semi-governmental meeting on September 18th in Beijing. North Korea has agreed to take part, but the United States and South Korea have their reservations as talks on North Korea's denuclearization were excluded from the agenda.
What we can reveal right now is that talks are underway concerning North Korea's denuclearization, but nothing has been decided.
China hosted a similar semi-governmental seminar in September 2011, but no progress was made. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And now to the latest on the political scandal rocking the nation. For the first time under a constitutional government here in Korea, an incumbent lawmaker has been arrested for conspiring to overthrow the government. Yoo has more on the ongoing investigation of Lee Seok-gi of the Unified Progressive Party.
Investigators have been grilling leftist lawmaker Lee Seok-gi at the headquarters of the National Intelligence Service since the early hours of Friday morning. The investigation is centered on the anti-state organization called the Revolutionary Organization, or RO, which reportedly consists of 130 members. NIS officials are now attempting to find out when the RO was formed and what its mission is. The spy agency has accused Lee of conspiring to stage a revolt with members of the RO, based on audio recordings the spy agency says it has of a meeting between members of the RO back in May. The NIS says Lee was planning to disrupt South Korean systems, including communication lines, railways, and other key infrastructure in the event of a war with North Korea. The spy agency has until September 14th to question Lee. Once the period comes to an end, the case will be handed over to the prosecution, which will have up to 20 days to decide whether Lee should be indicted. Lee pleaded his innocence at his warrant examination hearing earlier on Thursday and accused the NIS of fabricating the allegations against him. Meanwhile, the main political parties are at odds over whether to expel Lee from the National Assembly. The ruling Saenuri Party has presented an expulsion motion for Lee Seok-gi to the Parliamentary Ethics Committee on Friday afternoon. The main opposition Democratic Party, however, is taking a more cautious stance, saying the party should wait to file the motion until Lee is in fact indicted. The motion requires at least 2/3 approval from the 300-member National Assembly. Yoo Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, President Park Geun-hye has called on G20 nations to coordinate their policies so that they can achieve growth together. The president was addressing world leaders on the first day of the G20 summit in St. Petersburg, Russia on Thursday. Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju, who is traveling with the president, files us this report.
The first session of the G20 Leaders Summit on Thursday was about growth and the world economy. The issue of Washington's plan to scale back its quantitative easing program topped the agenda. In a speech, President Park emphasized the importance of policy coordination among the G20 countries for joint growth. She said if things get difficult for emerging economies, it will make things harder for developed countries as well, as economic conditions in one country can quickly affect another in the current economic climate. President Park called on developed nations to take a more cautious stance in putting an end to their stimulus measures, considering the negative impacts the move will have on emerging markets.
Although an exit strategy is aimed at normalizing the abnormal, she emphasized that developed countries should carefully think about how it will affect emerging nations.
Senior Presidential Secretary for Economic Affairs Cho Won-dong told reporters that President Park played a role as what he called a facilitator, trying to bridge the gap between developing and developed nations. President Park also stressed the need to set up a G20 strategy to restore financial stability and welcomed plans to tackle overseas tax avoidance and to develop a global system for tax information exchange, all of which will be included in this year's joint communique. Meanwhile, attention has been drawn as to whether President Park will separately hold talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe during the summit. Cheong-won confirmed that the two shortly met at a reception ahead of a working dinner in the evening. After wrapping up her G20 summit schedule on Friday, President Park is scheduled to hold bilateral talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin, where she is expected to seek support for her North Korea policy, just as she did with U.S. President Barack Obama and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, St. Petersburg.
Korea and China have reached agreement on the basic guidelines for their negotiations on a bilateral trade pact, focusing on the level of liberalization to be permitted under the agreement. Seoul's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy said Friday that the two sides had finalized the modalities for trade in goods, services, investment, and economic cooperation. The two countries met for 3 days in Beijing. In the manufacturing sector, the ministry said it had agreed to relax or remove import tariffs on 90% of all products in terms of the number of items, or on 85% of all imports in terms of their monetary value. The two sides also agreed to seek a high-level FTA for the service and investment sectors. Korea has expanded its import ban on fisheries products from Japan to include all fisheries products from the radiation-hit Fukushima and 7 other prefectures nearby. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries made the announcement on Friday following an emergency meeting prompted by rising public concern about radiation levels. The ban includes all marine products from the 8 prefectures in Japan, regardless of whether they are contaminated or not. In addition, the government has decided to strengthen testing for radioactive materials in fisheries imports by lowering the allowed amount of radiation to 100 becquerels per kilogram from the current 370. The government also said it will request additional radiation tests on other products from other regions of Japan when even a minuscule dose of radioactive material is detected.
And now on to the latest in the Syrian crisis. The international pressure on Russia intensified after Moscow was forced to deny U.S. allegation that it supplies chemical weapons to Syria. Russia is also under fire for blocking all UN Security Council efforts to punish the Assad regime for its use of chemical weapons. Our Connie Lee has more.
Is Russia supplying chemical weapons to Syria? U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel said yes, before his statements were clarified. A Kremlin official called the allegations rubbish.
These allegations, forgive me for saying this, are rubbish, just rubbish. They use it to provide people who don't know much on the matter with another idea.
Hagel had said on Wednesday that Russia supplied chemical weapons to the Syrian regime before the Pentagon backed off from the claim, saying that Hagel was referring to conventional weapons. Meanwhile, the British Prime Minister's office declared on Thursday that British scientists found traces of sarin gas on clothing and soil samples taken from the Damascus suburb that came under chemical weapons attack late last month. This came as the U.S. slammed Russia for holding the UN Security Council hostage in an effort to protect the Syrian regime.
Russia continues to hold the council hostage and shirk its international responsibilities.
The latest remarks seem to show that Washington will not seek UN approval before launching military action on Syria. Russia has used its veto power 3 times to block council resolutions punishing the Syrian regime. U.S. President Barack Obama, who is in Russia for the G20 summit, is now urging international leaders to support his call for a limited military strike against Syria. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Still staying on the topic of Syria, a new video released Thursday shows graphic images of Syrian rebels executing government soldiers. The video, smuggled out of Syria and obtained by the New York Times, shows rebel fighters standing over 7 government soldiers and killing them execution style. In the video, the rebel commander is seen reciting a poem saying, quote, "For 50 years they are companions to corruption, we will take revenge," quote unquote, before shooting the soldiers. The new video shows the blurred lines of the Syrian civil war and also intensifies the challenge for U.S. President Barack Obama, who is trying to persuade lawmakers to authorize military action against the Syrian regime. Shifting gears now, the world's only arts biennale dedicated to typography is currently underway at a train station turned art gallery in central Seoul. Our cultural correspondent Park Ji-won reports.
Culture Station Seoul 284 is now playing host to the world's only art fair solely dedicated to exploring the beauty of typography. Some 60 artists or artist groups from both in and outside of Korea have joined the event. Korea's leading font designer Lee Ho, whose career spans more than 20 years, is one of the participants.
I visualized a verse of a poem with pipes. Pipes are mechanical devices with no emotions, and I try to sublimate them into a part of a poem.
This year's theme is typography as literature, and the exhibition shows how typography can be an active element in literary works. From choices of fonts to colors and layouts of the typefaces, typography doesn't just function as a means to convey written text. For example, this British book published in 2008 uses different typefaces for each character. And this French book uses bright colors freely on pages, adding bizarre features to the fantasy novel.
Typography is not a simple element that comprises a visual graphic. With it, texts can be consumed and communicated with readers in a different dimension.
Visitors can enjoy a diverse set of typography works, from installation art pieces to visual art pieces.
I really like this exhibition, and especially like the first one I saw done by Korean artists, because it looks both simple and it's kind of mixture of calligraphy, so I really liked it.
Many different typography, and the building itself is amazing too.
The exhibition will continue throughout mid-October and is free to visitors. The exhibition opens every day except Mondays. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The best and brightest electronics manufacturers from all over the world have descended upon Berlin for IFA or IFA, the world's leading trade show for consumer electronics and home appliances.
Our Kim Jin reports on Samsung's latest contribution to the ever-evolving television market.
It's called the BMW of televisions. Samsung unveiled one of the world's largest curved ultimate high-definition television at Berlin's IFA Tech Show on Friday. The 65-inch screen boasts real-life picture quality as it combines the merits of UHD and OLED TVs. The TV also embodies what Samsung calls a timeless gallery design, looking more like an artistic piece hung on a gallery wall than a TV.
Through its premium TVs such as the UHD TV and the curved OLED TV, Samsung strives to become one of the top global TV manufacturers in the world.
Sony, the first company to mass-produce the UHD TV, is also in the mix, debuting its 65-inch LED HTV at the IFA show in Berlin. Although its image quality isn't quite up to the standards of Samsung's, it is equipped with a curved screen panel. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Samsung Electronics on Wednesday pulled back the curtain on a smartwatch that links with its Galaxy line smartphones and can make phone calls, take pictures, and send messages.
This long-awaited launch, which came ahead of the IFA Tech Convention in Berlin, is seen as the Korean tech giant's attempt to set a new trend in the global mobile device industry.
For more on the latest in the smart tech industry, we are now joined by Shim Soo-min, a researcher from KT's Economics and Management Research Lab. Hello, Mr. Shim.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, Shim, or Simon, if I might call you that. So tell us a little bit about the Galaxy Gear. I mean, I'm hearing mixed reviews about it. Some say it's just a bulky technological piece that has cameras on it, but I would love to hear some positive things about it.
Yeah, different from what many people expected before, the Galaxy Gear is not the smartphone alternative device. Like other smartwatches, it runs with Android-based and the smartphone and the tablet PCs. But the Galaxy Gear can differentiate itself from the other competitors in the smartwatch with the special features. For example, in the voice control and the direct phone call function, and the 1.9 megapixel the camera located on the watch strap. But on the other hand, many people are disappointed by its maybe short battery life and the pricing problem and insufficient mobile app content.
So, you talked about short battery life. Does it heat up a little bit when it's
not a heat up, but just run with 23 hours. Mm-hmm. But as usual, our casual watch run with at least 2 years. It's very short.
Nonetheless, voice activated, that's a dream come true for a lot of tech nerds and geeks and fans of anything that's technology oriented out there.
Yeah.
Right. I was very surprised by this new, Galaxy Watch smartwatch. Who would have thought of that, So it seems like we are being bombarded with, a new line of smart devices seemingly every day. Sometimes it's hard to keep up with all of them, So how are these smart devices with new functions are changing our lives?
At first, we can define such a new line of the smart devices as a wearable device. Wearable device can enrich your lifestyle with the personalized big data and the connectivity and the infrastructure. For example, a wearable device can be a very efficient tool to collect or analyze your live log, personal big data. And then collected data can be used for producing and providing more personalized and more predictive services. For example, in the mobile health with the wearable activity trackers are rapidly jumping up, growing up, and then wearable device can be the proper law as the entry to connected society. In the future, everything, every material, every device can be connected on the network, so you can interact with the many connected devices by using the wearable devices. For example, you can get the automatically generated notification from home appliance and control them with your voice or other actions.
Right, in this age of connectivity, smartphones, smart watches and whatnot, one name that's certainly fallen behind, I would say Microsoft, and also another name that's been plummeting down to eternal abyss has been Nokia. And it looks like they're teaming up because Microsoft, which has bought the Finnish handset maker Nokia recently. Do you think this little team up can maybe do something to affect the landscape of the global mobile market?
When it comes to the market share, it's very difficult to change their market situation. Before the announcement of an M&A deal, the Windows Mobile operating system, that the market share was 3%. Nokia had only 3.1% in the world in the smartphone industry. Therefore, many experts in the stock trading market underestimated the synergy impact of the two companies. But I have a different point of view. I think they can have another opportunity to turn around their situation in B2B market, in the U market.
Well, so with the latest developments in the global tech industry, Apple, Google, and Microsoft now have both hardware and software. So how will this affect Korean handset makers like Samsung and LG? Is it good news for them or bad news for them?
Very, very bad. The platform giants, which have their own hardware company, can produce and can create their sophisticated hardware and then customize for their own platform system. But after Microsoft, the acquisition of the Nokia, Samsung and LG and other Korean manufacturers have gotten lost of the alternative option. They have only the one option, Android. So they have they have to develop their own software skill and find another solution.
Right, I'm sure, like you mentioned, Simon Shim, that Korean software companies and of course the tech giants will always find another way to work against their global competitors. Thank you so much for joining us today. We look forward to having you again someday to enlighten us on what's new in the tech realm. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
It's time for weather. That means we turn to our Michelle Park. Hello, Michelle. We feel like autumn is finally somewhere nearby with nice breeze in the air, right?
That's right, Daniel. Hard to believe it was just a few days ago when we were actually complaining about how hot it was.
Right. By the looks of the weather, soon we're going to be complaining about how cold it is.
Yes, Yanji, but for now we can just enjoy this nice temperature, although we have lots of clouds covering up the sun. This mild weather will continue throughout the week, but without clouds, so this weekend will be a good time to go out. However, the rain will continue on Jeju and in the southern provinces until tomorrow. Taking a closer look at the forecast, most of the temperatures are now in the 20s. Seoul will start off the morning at 18 and reach 29 degrees in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the cities in the south, such as Daegu and Busan, will peak at 25 and 24 degrees respectively. Down on Jeju Island, we can expect some showers until tomorrow, which will ease up during the day. Meanwhile, Dokdo and Mount Kumgang will be cool with clouds hitting the low 20s. Well, that's all I have for you today. I'm Michelle Park, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you for that, Michelle. That's all from us for this hour. Have a relaxing weekend. This has been Daniel Chan.
And I'm Kim Hyun-ji. Stay tuned to Arirang for more news coming up.